Hello, and good evening, and welcome to this edition of the TNT Show. We're living in fairly feverish times with an election looming on July the 4th. So there's lots and lots to talk about. I'm John Drummond. I'm your host for the next 60 minutes. And as I say often, the TNT Show and India Live are growing, and it's all thanks to you. You can watch this show on indialive.net. It's streamed out on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. Plus, as a bonus almost, you can watch on YouTube every single one of all the previous shows, and there's almost 3 years worth there. And we've had, as we always do, excellent guests. Now, again, as I have said before, some would say the fourth estate in Scotland is mostly fourth rate. And I think you've seen some evidence of that in the recent past as we move into election mode, where material is carefully tweaked, altered, edited, and abused in order to present a particular point of view. And it happened most recently with the coverage of the suspension of the SNP MSP Michael Matheson. So if you're upset by the media coverage of political events, where journalism is often junked in favour of stenography or rehashed news releases, or worse, where conjecture and hearsay replace facts, if you're looking for an alternative voice, well, you found it. We're here for you. Please be here for us. Do support the Crowdfunder. And you can start with a very modest donation of £1 or £5 or whatever. If you're feeling particularly sort of liquid, you might want to go as far as 10, 20, who knows. It's your choice, but I would really implore that you support India Live and use the Crowdfunder when it comes up. By the way, you're about to see the media in Scotland and BBC Scotland in particular in fearsome election mode. This means that unionist perspectives will dominate with a grudging concession to any others. So it's really no surprise what's been happening in terms of the proposed leaders' debates. It seems to be the case that the SNP is leaderless. It's been another great week for British democracy. The UK is supposedly a multi-nation, some would say multi-party democracy, with 4 nations reflecting different political cultures across the island and just beyond. And there's every chance, despite what some would say, that there might be close to a hung parliament. Well, you could argue in these circumstances that people do very much need to hear from the various different political parties represented in their ballot papers. Otherwise, frankly, it's a stitch-up that somebody somewhere has decided that they want only one of 2 parties to be unhindered in power. Despite this fact, the broadcasters proposed to platform only 2 of the leaders. Now, apart from denying the electorate the information that they need and ought to get in order to form a judgment, in my view, it runs the risk that some people may be tempted to refuse to accept the result if they view that result as tarnished. So this is dangerous stuff when the broadcasters take it upon themselves to decide not to include the 3rd largest party in Parliament. That's a departure. And if there's anything that holds the UK Constitution together, it's generally an observance of what has gone before, i.e. there's not necessarily any principle involved, but there's a tremendous reliance on precedents. In other words, because something happened, that ought to continue until there is some election or a broad-based decision to do otherwise, simply to allow one of the leaders who's terrified, perhaps, of meeting somebody like Stephen Flynn face-to-face in a television studio because they can't think as quickly or as profoundly, is no reason to eliminate Stephen Flynn from a leaders' debate. In fact, it's counterproductive in my view. All that's happened is that the SNP now has a platform. Now, whether the SNP is capable or wishes to pursue that platform in a way that might produce a permanent change in broadcasters' minds is a moot point. But we'll see. We'll see how things develop. Again, I would issue an invitation to Alba MSP Ash Reagan to come on the show and give us her point of view at this crucial election time. Well, tonight we'll be talking to a special guest, writer Lorena Serantes. And this is going to be really exciting. If you're interested in the way politics operates across the board, if you're interested in knowing how other countries handle similar issues such as that which concern the UK, the way the different countries and nations within the UK and the British Isles organise themselves, well, this will be hugely interesting for you. She'll be discussing what's happening right now in Catalonia and across Spain, and we'll be talking about politics and much else besides. So please take this opportunity because she'll be taking your questions live. By the way, there's still time to submit a question. If you feel you want to do so, you'll find the details on the screen. As you know, TNT stands for The Nation Talks. So in respects, we're your show. We're live and we're free. So no license, no problem. Now to our guest. Thanks so much for joining us. Hi, Lorena. How are you?
Hi, John. Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm fine. I hope you are doing well as well.
Thank you. Yeah, exceptionally well. And all the better for having the chance to talk with you, if I may say so. I said we would talk about what's happening in Catalonia. Now, bearing in mind that most of the people in our audience tonight get their information from the British media, it would be good to know from you what is happening in the light of the latest elections in Catalonia, and then we'll go on and talk about other things in Spain and elsewhere.
Well, in this year, Catalonia had its regional election, and the progress of the pro-unionist parties has become very important in terms of the Spanish media have been highlighting that, as you may know, the branch, what we would say is the Catalan branch of the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party has won the election. It's not the same party because the Catalan Socialist Party has a long tradition of being in electoral agreements with the PSOE, with the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party. But in terms of that, I would say that the problem is the pro-independence voters are very fed up with the political parties, with the Republican left of Catalonia, who was the party in government before the election, and of course with Together for Catalonia, which was the party in which the leader was Carles Puigdemont, who was the president of the Catalan government back during the time of the 2017 referendum. So basically, that people didn't turn up to vote for the pro-independence parties, and what happened is that we have in Catalonia a very right-wing parliament right now. That the People's Party, which is a right-wing party, despite the Spanish media try to keep it as a centrist party, it is not. It's a very right-wing party with Vox, which is the main extreme right party in Spain. You would know them for being very similar to Giorgia Meloni in Italy, and several other
Nigel
Farage, of course, as well. He's on the spotlight again in the media, in the British media. So Vox is on the spotlight in the Spanish media as well. And of course, these parties have obtained many more MPs. The People's Party has now 15. I think they had 9 or less than 9 in the last parliament. I think Vox is also doing very well in a place that you would think that the far right wouldn't get so many votes, but the thing is that the parties that the people that turned to vote was the pro-union people who wanted to send that message of Catalonia is not pro-independence in at this point. We are fed up. We are tired of pro-independence governments, the broken promises, both from Republican left of Catalonia, who had decided to go back into autonomist proposals with, making agreements to elect the Spanish president Pedro Sanchez with the Socialist Workers' Party of Spain, which is the party in government. So basically, most of the pro-independence vote has been lost, and the Socialist Workers' Party of Spain and the PSC in Catalonia, these parties have turned to the right. So many people who used to give the vote to the People's Party have decided now to move towards voting this new party, which is more right wing.
Well, what do you put that down to, Lorena? Because looking at Catalonia from the UK and Scotland in particular, it looks like the independence vote somehow, did people just not turn up, or did they just say, no, I feel there's been mismanagement in Catalonia and I want to send a message to the Catalan, or was it both? Was it a combination of both?
Well, it was a combination. I think there was a lot of people who decided not to vote because of the disastrous government they had. Others were just like trying to send a message of protest against the establishment and all of that, and it's certainly many of the political parties in Catalonia have shifted in many ways from, we are not in 2017. We are not in that moment of the referendum. So the PSC, if you remember, the main left center left party, they call them center left. I would say it's a center of right party, but you would remember there was like a unionist front and a pro-independence front back in 2017. So the PSC decided to mobilize within that unionist pro-union front, and the thing is that the PSC has decided to move on from that, from going into demonstrations with bogs, with citizens, which I think is another party.
This is really interesting. Did people in Catalonia genuinely feel that their government was performing poorly? And if they did think that, why did they think that?
Well, mainly I would say the pro-independence electorate in Catalonia thought that Republican left of Catalonia was doing agreements with the Spanish government, and in spite of doing what should have been done, which is implementing the Catalan Republic. Yeah. Well, this party decided to say, no, we have to talk. We need to talk with which is something that in Scotland is happening every day. This debate of we need to talk we need to ask the UK government to have a referendum, or we can force an early Holyrood election, and then we can proclaim.
The version that people get outside Spain is that Sanchez needs Puigdemont to govern.
Yes, that is right.
His majority depends on that. he's running a minority government, if I understand it, because the Conservative groupings got more votes than he did, and therefore he's running a minority government, and he needs people and others to help him.
He needs the votes from all nationalist parties.
From all the nationalist parties. But what you're telling me seems to have happened is that in supporting him, the nationalists have discovered that their vote has been reduced because the people who prefer separation don't want any form of alignment with the government of Spain, whatever form that government takes. Is that right?
That is right, because mainly you have to, the parties have, the Catalan parties have, and the Spanish parties as well, have forgotten about what happened in that referendum. But the Catalans who were to vote in the 1st of October in 2017, they haven't forgotten what the Spanish government did, the way they sent out the police, the civil guard to beat the voters on the referendum. So when you, it's like a betrayal of your ideals, which are, we want to have a referendum. We don't have to ask for the Spanish government. Yeah,
but at some stage, there's a terrible reality here, and it's a fact. If you look at the history of separatist movements over the last 200, 300 years, this is almost a classic way, a classic path that Catalonia is moving along. That there's always a tendency to say to the governing entity, "Look, let's sit down round the table and work something out." And sometimes, once in 100, that actually works, because the governing entity is so weak that it says, "Okay, I'll give you this, 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 and this." And then the Separatist Party goes back to its followers and say, "Okay, we didn't get what we actually set out to get, but we got something that's pretty substantial." And depending on how convincing they make that story, that will either keep their vote, or it sounds like in this case, it actually led to the vote disappearing. And but that's not unusual, and you need to go through another.
Yes, that's a trajectory that, if you look at what happened in 2017, that was broken, because the Catalonian, the former Catalonian presidents would have never decided to go and have a referendum without asking the Spanish government, without saying, many of the pro-unionist arguments were, okay, if you want to have a referendum, we have to vote, or the Spanish people has to vote, So all of the, I'm not from Catalonia. I'm from Galicia, but I don't think I have I don't think I have to vote to decide what the Catalans want. I mean, I wouldn't vote in a referendum for independence in a place that is not mine, because that would be wrong. It's simply not, so
it is exactly though what central governments tend to do. I mean, there's, like I said, there's centuries of experience of exactly that. You offer a little bit and you hope they go away. You offer a little bit more and you hope they go away. But the thing you never do, which has happened in the UK, you never go back as the centralising party. Because if you go back, what you do is strengthen the separatists. If you go, in other words, if you make a concession, like you can have your own parliament, and then say, but we're going to make it such that you can't work it. In other words, we'll cut your funding, even though you have a building and you have people in it, ostensibly making decisions. For central reasons, we'll cut your budget. I think when you start doing that, or like has happened tonight, the broadcasters making a unilateral decision not to platform the Separatist Party. I think these are terrible mistakes, because what they do is they shore up, if you look at it from a unionist point of view, they shore up the nationalist support. But it may not show itself right away, by the way, because it's not unusual for people to say, well, okay, I feel let down, I'm not going to vote for you this time. But these people tend to come back. I'll give you an example. the latest opinion polls suggest that the Labour Party will take a number of seats
Yes,
from the
I've seen it.
SNP.
I've seen it.
But
Yeah.
what's fascinating is the actual support for independence has remained rock solid at 51%.
Yeah,
So
and I would like to add that in terms of the sympathy with the Scottish leaders, the most valued leader in Scottish politics is not Anna Sauer, who is the Scottish Labour leader. So he's not very well seen. So John Sweeney, which is the leader of the SNP, is the most valued leader
But I
in
wonder how
Scotland.
much value there is. I mean, it's always good to be esteemed more than your opponents, but I
Yeah,
wonder if, in electoral terms, it amounts to very much, unless you can somehow exploit that favourability. I mean, what tends to happen in politics, as you know, is that a charismatic personality will carry the day, whether it be
yes,
back in the 60s in the States with John F. Kennedy, who, by the way, almost lost. If it hadn't been for the mob coming out to fix the vote in Illinois, he would have lost that election. But nonetheless, he proved to be quite an assertive president once he got into power. But I just wonder, when I look at other people whose favourability ratings are high or better, they tend, unless you capitalise upon it, unless you be dogmatic, for example, it's very hard to exploit that sometimes. Would you say?
yeah. Well, in terms of Catalonia, for example, you, none of the leaders were really, when there were many people saying, okay, the PSC leader, which is Salvador Illa, he's very popular because he talks about dialogue, and he talks about talking and
Yes.
with the Spanish government, and
Yes.
but he's not an extremist. He's not in fact, I had an interview with him, and he's very moderate. He's a center left moderate, I would say, such as Keir Starmer. I would say he's the Catalan Keir Starmer, but he's not popular in a way you would argue he has a very much decent popularity within the electorate. So in that case, it shows that charismatic leaders can be very relevant in some contexts. But in
Yeah.
case of Catalonia, you have Puigdemont, which was one of the best politicians Catalonia has had in these last years. Regardless of the views that you have to recognize that he's a very he has very good advisors, as I normally say. But in case of in looking at Scotland, I don't see any charismatic leader as well. So I think the processes are very similar in that way. I
Yeah.
think
I
when you
suppose
look
one
at
difference, though, Lorena, would be if there
yeah,
was a referendum tomorrow, Catalonia probably would not vote for separation, would it?
I don't know, but I would argue that well, I would argue that first you have to first you would have to put up with the Spanish government saying if you want a referendum, we will send the army or
Yes, I
whatever.
know. I know.
It's
I'm
back.
assuming let's assume somebody with a magic wand tapped it and said there's going to be a referendum tomorrow. Is there any polling like there is in Scotland every week or every month that says this is the support for independence? It's fairly clear, it's fairly constant. Is there any such measure of?
It's constant, but it's also very in time of the by the time of the referendum in 2017, it was like 49-51. It was like you didn't know if it was going to be the pro-independence vote. It was going to be the 51 or the 45. And now what seems to happen is that many of that momentum has gone. The support for independence is there, but we don't have many polls around it, because it would mean for the Spanish government, it would mean they will have to recognize that there's a pro-independence movement. But in terms of political support, independence is very, pro-independence is very popular in Catalonia. So you cannot say because a pro-union party has won the election, the people have decided, no, we wanted to be independent back in 2017. now after the pandemic, we want to be with,
Yeah, I think that's a good comment, because it seems to me that's almost what's going to happen in Scotland now. What's going to happen in Scotland now is unless the SNP can pull its socks up and present something more appealing to the electorate has now got to a stage where, perhaps mainly based on misleading media coverage, got to the stage now where many of the traditional separatist independence voters are saying, no, I'd like a change.
That's right.
And it may well be that the SNP will end up in a minority, or maybe a significant minority. And people will read into that, I suspect, unless I'm very much mistaken, that represents a complete lack of enthusiasm for independence.
Yes,
I think that would be
that's what's happening that's what's happening in Catalonia right now. Many on TV, it's always like, the political momentum of independence in Catalonia has passed away. Now we have to focus on, I've recently compared Salvador Illa to Keir Starmer, but I think it would have been for me more, more accurate to say he's the West Streeting of Catalan politics, because he was, during the pandemic, he was the health secretary in Spain. Well, the minister for health. We don't have secretaries, we have ministers. It's the same position, but with a different name. So he was the health minister, and he became very unpopular in that moment because of the mismanagement of the pandemic. You had Boris Johnson as well. And Matt Hancock, who was the health secretary by that time, I think. So basically, what's happening, what happened recently in Catalonia, I think it's what's going to happen in Scotland in a few in a few months. So you don't have to have a very good popularity to become the next party, the next president of the government, and the next party who runs the government.
It's interesting. We've had a question about Galicia, and the question is there any support or much support for Galician independence?
Well, Galician independence is not we have like I would say we are like 50% of pro-independence support. 15, not 50, 15. It's very low, and our main party is not a pro-independence party. Our main nationalist party is just a broad nationalist left-wing party. I would say, it's not like the SNP or Plaid Cymru, who are both focused on independence of Wales and Scotland. In Galicia, it's more like we have our own identity. We are a nation. But the case of independence is very different to make, because this is a very conservative, and not in terms of British conservatism, but Spanish conservatism, which is very different, which has its very common traits. When, back to Francoism, it was better. And now with this sort of left-wing governments, it was better when Franco was alive, and these people, the same arguments a homophobic or a racist or a xenophobic person would say. So Spanish conservatism is very popular here. So people would say, I am Galician, I feel Galician, it's an identity that is there, but I am Spanish as well. People are not going to tell you, no, I am only Galician, not Spanish. It's a true identity.
Well, that's not unusual. I mean, if you go to the United States and you talk to somebody from Texas, they will say, I'm a Texan, and then I'm an American.
Yes, and it's very different, the situation, because in the United States, the process in which the states were getting their sort of independence and national identities were very, very different. It was a very different process that the process we have in the Spanish regions. But I would say that Galician independence is not very popular right now, and it will never be popular, in terms of being completely independent. We have a sort of dependence on many other regions, and people don't see that there's a way in which we can be an independent state.
I understand. I mean, Spain is fascinating in many respects, because there is still a hangover from Franco. I mean, a lot of people in the UK don't perhaps fully appreciate that, because it was such a traumatic period in the history of Spain, which, again, as we were saying off air, British people have never experienced revolution, really, to speak of. There's always been some sort of deal struck to prevent a revolution. There have been odd uprisings, Peterloo and some in Scotland too and elsewhere, but they never ever manifested themselves into a sort of nationwide movement so much. And even if you look at issues, things like the emergence of the Labour Party, it was sort of gradualist, and they sort of moved out of the Liberals and stuff like this, So it's difficult to fully understand how things change so drastically for people in the event of a revolution because of this. But the other thing I wanted to mention, of course, is that having any discussion on behalf of the Spanish government about independence or separation would be unconstitutional, wouldn't it? I mean, because the Constitution preserves the integrity of the Spanish state, doesn't it?
Yes, but as I normally say, this is in you can't the way of interpreting the Constitution. If you are from a very right wing, conservative background, you will say, no, we can't have referendums. We can't have a vote. Spain has to be just one. If you look at the Vox political platform, if you look at what they are saying, is we have to remove the autonomous communities, because we are, it's very expensive to have all these assemblies, all these politicians. We have to pay everything. We have the healthcare system, the education system, the economy, defense. Everything run by the Spanish government, and in everything has to be the same for people in Galicia, from Galicia to Murcia, from Asturias to the Canary Islands. It has to be all the same, which is it's not possible. We've had in Galicia a very interesting and compelling writer who was a Galician nationalist writer, who was a member of parliament during the Second Republic back in 1936 to 1939, 1931 to 1936. So he would say it's impossible to rule Spain, because there are so many different regions with the different cultures, with the different languages, which are not we don't have like dialects of Spanish. It's languages. It's different languages. If you go to the Basque country, I can't understand the Basque language. It's impossible for someone in Galicia to understand what they say, and many people from Catalonia will tell you the same. It's impossible. It's a language we don't even know where it comes from. So it's very thinking that every corner of the country is the same, and that from the central government they can't do everything, and we have to just look at them and say, okay, it's the same for everybody. It is very, very difficult to.
There's two things I want to address a question that came in at the beginning. I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear from you, please. The question is, does Spanish politics have the same problems as we have with the effects of corporate money influencing a policy?
No, I would argue we have many more problems in Spain than in the UK. Spain is a southern European semi-democratic country. I wouldn't call it a democracy, a full democracy. It's very difficult to say that a European country is a full democracy, because of the story, the history of European politics has never been easy to analyze in terms of this country is more democratic than. But in terms of if you're talking about corruption and all this sort of things, Spain has a very it's like a problem that goes back to the very roots of the government and the political system. So yes, it's terrible, but this comes from the 19th century, when we had war. When it was it's called I don't know in English how to say it, but I would say it was called Turnism. So it was like two main parties, which were conservatives and liberals, and they were like with this sort of corruption in which when the conservatives they won an election, and in the next election the liberals were the ones who won. So then back to the conservatives, back to liberals, and that was and they had an agreement to do that. So
really?
The government, it was an agreement between those major parties. So in that, there were some Republican socialist parties, minor parties, who weren't able to do anything, because these two main parties, it's the conservatives and the liberals. You had those two parties as well, back when Labour was irrelevant. So we had that experience, and then we had a first dictatorship from Primo de Rivera, who was a military leader. And then we had the Second Republic. The Second Republic was a tiny little period of democracy. But when the left wing decided to unite, we had the socialists, communists, anarchists, center-left parties, nationalist parties, regionalist parties, all coming together in the Popular Front in 1936. The right wing couldn't they couldn't stand that the left wing had won the election, and they that was
that led to Franco.
Yes.
Ernest Hemingway and all of that good stuff. Well,
so
but see, in many respects,
the thing is that the UK.
That's actually what happened before the changes. I mean, that's essentially what happens in the UK. I mean, they call it Buggins' turn. In other words, the Tories will rule for a period of time, and then Labour will take over. But the Labour Party that takes over has fused. It gets power because it doesn't look too threatening, i.e. it gets power because it's essentially sort of conservative, but with a small c. I'm not thinking about conservative in the sense of Galician, but a small c conservative, i.e., that we believe in privatising the health service. We believe all the things that the present Conservative government is doing. It just has a red rosette rather than a blue rosette, really. And when you ask Keir Starmer, I'm sure you've heard his speeches, his concern is not to frighten the horses. It's not to do anything radical. It's to make sure that people who previously voted Conservative are not frightened away from it. So he's more than happy to get rid of black MPs, women MPs, because they're left.
Yeah, and that's totally fine if you want to, move further to the right. It's totally fine, but you cannot go and say, I'm a socialist, because you are, taking the people as if they were fools. It's that problem. It's that the problem I have with Keir Starmer and his front benchers, who I think they are way worse than him.
I think that's true. I think, though, it presents an interesting environment for the nationalists in Scotland, because essentially what it means is that the Labour Party in Scotland will lose time and time again against the centre. For example, the centre will say things like, we intend, as they have said, that there will be student fees and they may rise. Now, to do that in England and Wales and not start it in Scotland would be crazy, because if I was an English voter, I would say, hold on a second, why are these people getting free education? I thought we were all part of the one country. You stood there, Keir Starmer, in front of a union flag and told us this is your country. Now you're allowing one group of people to have special privileges, as they see it. It may not be true, but that's the way they may see it. It'll be very hard for Labour MPs in Scotland to argue against the centre. And this is where you end up with a Labour Party that's riven.
That's what we called coffee for everyone. The policy in Spain is that when Catalonia or the Basque Country, which are the main areas, the nationalists are very popular there. If they ask for more competences on immigration, as recently happened in the Catalan case, you would you would have to put up with all the presidents of the rest of the autonomous community saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" I mean, we want that. If the Catalans are getting the immigration system, so they can't run that system, we want to do it as well. Why can't we do it as well? So the thing is that the People's Party and the Socialist Party usually come to this, this rhetoric of saying the nationalists are taking, they just want privileges to their own areas and not the rest of the country.
I hear what you're saying about the inadequacies of the Spanish state, and that's interesting. One thing I'd like to say, and I'm not Spanish, but I have to tell you this because it's true. In my experience, the health service in Spain is one of the best in the world. Now, I don't know how that came about, Lorena, but it is the case. I mean, it's anyone who's experienced the huge and growing difficulties in the UK is astonished when they come to Spain and see how well the system works. What do you put that down to? How was Spain able to steal a march on all of these other countries that have tried to do the same sort of things? I'm thinking particularly of the IT systems, where a patient can actually set a medical appointment with their doctor online on an app.
Yes,
I mean,
I have that one.
Sorry? Yeah, I mean, it makes the UK look like a third world country. I mean, it's just astonishingly better. And we're not talking about rocket science. We're talking about awfully simple IT that puts the patient in charge. Why do you think that happened? How did that come about?
Well, when the welfare system used to work properly, now they want to privatize, and they are privatizing everything, and it's not just the extreme right, it's Pedro Sanchez, the progressive government, as they say, as they call it. So when the welfare system we were doing very well. The Social Democrats, the Socialist Workers' Party of Spain, the name is very contradictory to the policies, because it's not a working class party nor a socialist party, but that's the name. So when the Socialist Workers' Party of Spain were very popular, and where these are typical concessions that both parties used to do in Spanish politics. So we had the People's Party winning the 1996 election because they were going to scrap the national service, which I know it's a policy that is going back to British politics. Well, the Spanish right wing decided it was a very popular policy because the youngest generations didn't want a national service at all. It was basically a horrible experience. And then, well, the Socialist Workers' Party of Spain made this concession, which in particular, I think the way it works right now is very, very bad compared to back in the 19s when it all began.
You mean the health service is worse in Spain than it was?
Yeah, right now, because the privatization is doing a lot of damage. We have hospitals in which you have many rooms which are not used for anything, and the government tells, no, we don't have money to to employ more doctors, or we have to many of these same things you would hear from a member of the Conservative Party. And of course, if you want to if you want to support the NHS, I would recommend that the next health secretary, who I think everyone knows who he's going to be, I would recommend him to come to Spain and see what this is like, because it's a very good service
It is.
despite the
Yeah.
privatizations and everything
Yes.
that's been happening in the last years. We have a very it's a system that actually works for everyone.
Yeah.
If you're an illegal immigrant or a migrant or a person with a disability, or you are going to be treated. If you go to the services of to the doctor,
I just
or
I just want to help our
you
audience
get the
understand
service.
that you're absolutely right. I want to help our audience understand how much better it is, because you're accustomed to it and maybe you don't quite see the enormous difference in the quality. It is truly extraordinary. For example, in Spain, listen to this, folks. In Spain, there is an app. You can download the app on your phone. You can, as I said earlier, you can set on the app an appointment time to go and see your GP. There's no doctor's assistant, there's no doctor's secretary. It's you and the app will come back and say, these are the alternatives you have. These are the dates that are free, morning and afternoon. You
Well, the
choose.
thing is that health is devolved. So I don't know if this happens in every part of the
Okay.
country.
Well,
In Galicia we have the app, of
okay,
course,
yeah.
but
Well,
I think
I
I
hope the
think
other
it's
parts of Spain have it too, because
I think they do. They
what
actually
what I
do.
want to go on and say, because many people listening who experience something other than this, imagine the patient has set a time and they turn up at the doctor and the doctor says, you need a prescription. The doctor uses the IT system to, not a physical piece of paper, it's electronic. So what happens is the doctor actually inputs the prescription. The individual then takes their health card and goes to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy completes the prescription. They don't
And
turn up a scrap of paper.
medicines in Galicia, for example, I must say that you don't have to pay
Yeah,
for,
I was going on
you
to say
have
that.
the social service
Yeah,
system which covers all these things. And
yeah,
of course, if you break a leg, or if you have an accident, or anything like that, you go to the hospital,
yes,
and every single treatment you require, you will get it for free. It's not for free because you have to pay taxes,
of course.
but you don't have to go and I have a bowel cancer, or
Yeah,
any type of cancer, and you need a lot of treatment, and you need a lot of pills, and you get them all for free. You don't have to pay, or there are no
mm,
restrictions on how to, you can't do this treatment, you have to do the other because this is too expensive. This is uh, beginning to happen in some places,
yeah.
but as far as I'm concerned, in Galicia, we still have a very good service. I would argue,
Well,
in
I
terms
would.
of in terms of comparison with the NHS in
Yeah.
England. I think the NHS in Scotland is better than the
Oh,
the
yeah.
English. Yeah,
Yeah. Uh, you wouldn't form that impression if you looked at BBC Scotland News, but that is the case in most respects. In fact, in almost every respect, it's superior.
yeah,
But what I would say to people is that if you want to see what's really good, you need to take a trip to Spain and see how fantastic it is compared to what exists in the UK. And the UK system is getting worse. And while it may be
yes,
true that
yes.
there's
That's
privatisation,
why I say to Mr. Streeting, if he wants to learn about health, about the healthcare system that works, he has to come to Spain. And
I don't think he's interested, with the greatest of respect, in
no, I don't
anything that
think he's
works.
interested in
I,
the NHS as well.
I agree. He'll only be there for 6 months or a year. That's the longevity of a typical cabinet minister or secretary in the UK. They They are in
Yes.
office for about 6 months to 9 months, a year. I think because of the stresses that they've self-imposed on themselves, the future Labour government, I fully expect that to be the case on July 4th, has actually bound itself unnecessarily to a set of requirements that constrained its predecessor, but it didn't have to do that. It had choices, it chose not to exercise those choices. And I think by not doing that, what will happen is that they'll be outflanked by in the left and the right, and they'll have difficulty sustaining themselves for 4 years. I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised if the government that's elected on July the 4th experiences real difficulty. But having said all of that, the reality is that Sanchez leads a minority government, and he seems to be doing rather well.
Well, as we mentioned before, he needs the support of the nationalist parties, and he needs the support of another left-wing party, which is called Sumar.
Yeah.
The translation is to add. So the name, I don't like the name, and the thing is that if you look at the polls, the parties who are getting who are getting the worst of this government, of this this years of progressive government, are the minor partners of the Socialist Workers' Party of Spain, not the main partner in the coalition. The others are like taking everything that is, so the Socialist Workers' Party of Spain is doing very well, because they are like when a problem appears within the government, the Socialist Workers' Party of Spain like go behind and let the others, the other parties, like fighting with each other. So then the Spanish government, the part of the Spanish government which is the Socialist Workers' Party of Spain, they just don't appear at all in the media. They just go back and they just it's better to be in silenced than
I know.
to say something that you, and then Sumar, Republican left of Catalonia, the Basque the Basque nationalists are very intelligent as well, but the Catalan nationalists, the other left-wing parties, the Canarian nationalists, we have every type of party here in Spain. And so they have like one MP or two MPs, and they are like fighting each other
It is crazy. I just want to share something with our audience. I don't think I've mentioned this before, but to give people an idea how crazy things are, not in Spain, because Spain appears to be pursuing its own interests fairly well in this respect, is about Gibraltar. A deal has been struck, as I understand it, that Gibraltar will be regarded as being in the Schengen area, even though it's part of the UK. This is to reflect the fact that Gibraltarians voted 98% in favour of staying against Brexit and staying in the EU. So the deal that's been struck is that anyone from Spain, Germany, France, Italy, Malta, Luxembourg, Ireland, going into Gibraltar will not need to show a passport, because Gibraltar is regarded as being Schengen.
Yeah,
the only people who will have to show a passport are people coming from Britain.
Yeah, that's the contradictory.
I mean, it's like Monty Python
rhetoric, but yeah, it's very but if you look at the the behavior from Spain towards Gibraltar has always been, it's always been like a bully. Spain acts like a bully towards Gibraltar. And when you look at the idea of Spanish nationalists going there to with the Spanish flag saying Gibraltar is part of Spain and not part of the United Kingdom.
Well, it's now they're now getting
Nonsense.
their wish by the sounds of it.
Nonsense.
Lorena, this has been really great. As I said before we started, we'll probably run out of time, and we have. We've run out of our time. I want to thank you most sincerely. If you can hang on for a few seconds after we go off air, I'd be very grateful,
Sure.
because I want to repeat
Yeah.
these thanks. Like I said, a big thank you to Lorena. I think we've learned a lot of stuff about, not just about Spain, but about Catalonia, how things operate differently in some respects. There are similarities, but perhaps not too many. Look out for the show next week at the same time, which features our special guest, SNP activist Graham McCormick. And remember, as I say every week, the world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do nothing. So to all of you, thanks for joining us. Stay safe, take care, and please, please send some money on the crowdfunder. Good night, all.